That's Nick.
And that's Joseph, and today we're here to talk about Eurovision Song Contest, the untold saga of Fire Saga. Oh wait, the story of...
It's a bullshit title.
Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga, which is the latest film directed by David Dobkin, premiering on Netflix June 26, 2020. Stars Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams.
So Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams play Fire Saga, an Icelandic singing duo who make it to Eurovision, basically.
Yeah. That's in a nutshell, sure.
Okay, so to break it down quickly, the film
starts out in 1974, Husavik, Iceland.
We see Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams characters who are named
Lars, Erickssong, and Sigrit, Ericksdottir, and Sigrit and Lars aren't really Icelandic names.
Okay. So Lars is a little boy, so is Sigrid. We're supposed to believe they're very close in age, which is distracting because obviously an adult Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams don't look like they're close in age. But anyway, Lars is at home with his family as a young boy singing to ABBA's Waterloo.
As they perform on Eurovision.
He's very excited, dancing around. Of course, everyone's making fun of him. He gets upset and says, "Don't laugh at me. One day I'm going to win Eurovision." So fast forward to modern.
He also says it in English. The only scene where they're really speaking Icelandic is that first scene.
Beginning. So fast forward to modern times. Will Ferrell is adult Will Ferrell, so kind of a mess. He's known as like the town idiot. We see them performing
Volcano Man. Which was
available on iTunes.
Yeah, which was released before the film. It's Will Ferrell is providing his own vocals, and Rachel McAdams is dubbed by a Swedish singer whose artist name is My Marianne.
Okay. Her vocals are very good.
Yeah.
And Will Ferrell's are also, which we'll get to, but his vocals are not. I mean, I don't think they're meant to be funny. Like they're decent.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Icelandic board in charge of selecting songs or entries for Eurovision are talking about who they're going to choose. They have several contenders in mind, but there's one in particular they know will be their entry, which happens to be Demi Lovato.
Playing Katiana.
Singing a song about a mirror, which, obviously she sounds great. They need one more entry because they only have 11 and they need 12. So Fire Saga has been submitting entries since forever and obviously has never been chosen. But we see the committee take a box of CDs and like randomly pull one, and that happens to be Fire Saga's song. So they're selected. They go to a performance where they kind of select officially who's going to go.
Yeah.
And of course, Fire Saga messes up. It's their first in many fumbles. So after that performance, there's a party on a boat, and all of the contenders are on the boat except for Fire Saga. They're on the what do you call that? The pier, kind of just being sad about how poorly they did when the boat explodes and kills all of the Icelandic entries. So now Fire Saga is the entry by default, and that explosion is part of like a kind of a plot twist.
Yes.
That you can kind of see from far away. But
yes.
So they make their way to Edinburgh for the Eurovision contest. They kind of fumble through like rehearsals, through their first performance. We meet a few interesting characters, namely Dan Stevens, who plays the Russian entry named
Alexander Lemtov,
a flamboyant, obviously gay man who ultimately says he is closeted because it's not acceptable in Russia.
Correct.
They mess up their first performance in the semifinals, but they are able to get through. And then during the final performance, they mess up again. They do not win Eurovision. But it has a nice ending because Sigrid's final performance is, I think, a beautiful song.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful song, and of course everyone loves it. It's about her hometown, so when they return back to their hometown, they're kind of like heroes. They end up having a baby together. The joke is that, so I forgot to say, Lars' dad is played by Pierce Brosnan, who's like the town stud. He's like this handsome man who's known to have been with every woman in town. So we aren't sure, and it's a running joke that we're not sure if Lars and Sigrid are brother and sister. So who cares, because they have a baby together now. And the film ends with them singing at Lars' dad's and Sigrit's mom's wedding. So they could potentially...
Well, then now
Lars and Sigrit could potentially be like sibling spouses.
Yeah, well, they are stepbrother and sister at the end.
At minimum. And that's the end. So what did we like about this film? I would say Rachel McAdams, who really isn't on my radar, except for you reminding me she was in Mean Girls. She's quite lovely.
Yeah.
And she does something pretty amazing with you.
Yeah, I think that, and we'll get into this more with what I didn't like about it, but if you consider her to be kind of the crown jewel of a throwaway film like this, she does what is almost miraculous in pulling out poignancy and empathy for a character that, halfway through it, I'm thinking this is just a garbage throwaway film, and it's like, oh, she's actually quite sweet and beautiful to watch.
I agree.
Yeah.
Dan Stevens playing the gay Russian man.
Oh yes, yeah.
Is this? I mean, that's probably the biggest source of laughs for me.
Oh yeah, and it's like Richard Marx hair, George Michael / Siegfried and Roy characterization, which in my notes I kept every time I think of Siegfried and Roy I think of Leopold and Loeb, which are also gay serial killers, killers, but anyway.
I don't think it's a masterpiece of comedy, but I think his performance he did a lot with what he was given.
Oh yes, and he gets a great song.
He gets a great song filled with innuendo.
Line of Love, which the lyric and the refrain is somewhere, someone tonight.
Yeah, that was a good line. The performances that we see from several of the entries, including Fire Saga, I think are some of the highlights of the film. Yeah. And I think the film looks expensive. So I appreciate it.
It was shot by Danny Cohen as a favorite of Tom Hooper. I'm not a favorite of Tom Hooper, who did, of course, King's Speech and Les Miserables. But also photographed Mr. Ferrell in Downhill.
Okay. I forgot about Downhill. Wow. That was only like 6 months ago?
That was February.
Oh, wow. Okay, what else do we like? So let's move on with the issues you had with this film, which were...
If I remember something I like, I'll say. So, of course, like the age difference between Ferrell and McAdams is immediately apparent. It's kind of like us having to believe Hugh Jackman and little white Michelle Williams are the same age in The Greatest Showman. And it's about that speed of corniness.
Well, we should start by saying, Will Ferrell has sort of a brand of film where it's like him and a topic, and he Ferrellizes it.
Yeah.
So let's make NASCAR ridiculous. Let's make newscasting ridiculous. So this is let's make Eurovision even more ridiculous. Strangely, though, as over the top as Eurovision is, this film is not. It's not proportional in how ridiculous it is. Right.
And his usual man-baby shtick, really, to me, that is the sore thumb that sticks out here.
So we know it's not supposed to be serious. I don't think it's that funny. And I think his shtick doesn't work that well for something that's already over the top.
Well, also, his skill isn't what's actually made fun of, as, say, Anchorman.
Right.
His voice is fine. It's made clear that Rachel McAdams is the one who's shining here. But he's just really a bumbling fool in every other regard. And also, of course, Pierce Brosnan is not old enough to be in that. But it doesn't really play with those kind of comedic things. And it's almost like it's begging to be, because at 2 hours long, it feels very bloated. And the best sequences really are kind of the musical numbers.
Including another, I guess you could say, highlight. Dan Stevens' character is a very wealthy man, and he has one of many mansions in Edinburgh where he hosts a party, and apparently there's a tradition where previous Eurovision winners go and do a sing-along. So there's an interesting montage. If you're a fan of Eurovision, you probably would appreciate it more than I did. However, the song choices, they do a montage of Madonna's Ray of Light, Cher's Believe, and ABBA's Waterloo.
So my little white gay self circa 1998 would have been very happy. However, I was very uncomfortable watching that sequence because it's corny.
It's corny, yeah, especially because the only winner I recognized was Conchita Wurst. But if you don't know Eurovision, it's just these random people sort of busting out in the song, High School Musical style. Yeah,
Eurovision is such a weird thing. The other film that came to mind while we were watching this was Isabelle Huppert and Souvenir a few years ago, where she plays a woman who came in second place to ABBA, I think at that same Eurovision, only to return there years later.
Which I enjoyed more, obviously, and it's more serious.
Much more serious, but also kind of that fun Euro trash vibe with the music that I like. But other than that, like Will Ferrell's it's just like it felt like every time we switched to Will Ferrell, I'm just like, yeah, that's the movie we're watching. When every now and then I'd almost forget it. Because otherwise the Pierce Brosnan, Will Ferrell thing, it's very Zoolander, daddy issues that don't work for me.
That isn't really that deep. I mean,
it is, and that's why it feels like you just cut all that out. Like, this is a film that begs to be under 90 minutes to me. And then there's like the weird little thing with Rachel McAdams' praise to elves.
So that would be, I like to say what I wish films would have been. Yeah. I wish this film would have focused more on the music, because those were, a lot of effort was put into these songs and the staging and the performances. Mm-hmm. Also, there is a quirky little thing where Sigrid believes in these like magical elves that will like answer her prayers, and she goes to give them offerings, and they have like little doors on the side of the hill. That was really weird and strange, and I think this film, because it needed to be more over the top than the subject matter. Yeah. So incorporating more of that would have really taken it over. Because like you said, Will Ferrell is like the king of buffoonery, and he just comes across as like a really aesthetically unappealing character. Kind
of like in Downhill too. It's just like, I don't believe it, because I think what I've read, some of the reactions to the film have been like, Rachel McAdams is miscast. I think Will Ferrell is the one that's miscast here. Yeah. Like, this needs to be somebody else entirely, because she's very appealing, both as an actress and of course she's beautiful, but he's the one that doesn't fit, at least with the tonal shifts of the film, and that is, I think that has something to do with Mr. Dobkin.
I think, and not that I'm like such a huge Sacha Baron Cohen fan, but I kind of feel like Sacha Baron Cohen could have done this better. It would have been. It doesn't feel very adult either.
No,
there's like a lot of innuendo. Even like Sigrid and Lars talking about sexual things, it feels very like PG-13.
Well, okay, and the fact that they don't pick up on Dan Stevens' homosexuality in the film, and to the point where she has to ask him and he has to say it, and he has a line about how there's nobody gay in Russia, which Russia's never said that. Russia just doesn't like gay people, and they want to.
It could have been much more scathing. I'm sure like Eurovision probably like co-signed on this production, and I'm sure many people had ideas of what they wanted.
Sure,
it just feels bloated, and
I think there is some subtext. There's some subversity that's going on with him being Russian, but after watching Welcome to Chechnya, it's like a little more fine-tuning could have happened there for me. But I think the problem rests with David Dobkin, who's probably best known for Wedding Crashers.
Okay.
Which was a bro comedy that came out when I was in college that I don't remember loving. It has kind of a big cult following. His last film was The Judge with Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall, which scored Mr. Duvall an Oscar.
Graham Norton's in the film. He plays like the commentator during like the finals of Eurovision. He's not very engaging. There's a lot that could have been cut out.
Well, consider going back to Mr. Dobkin, he started out in music videos. He directed some Tupac videos, Coolio, Elton John. So it's somebody that's obviously interested in music. I read that Will Ferrell has been, because his wife is some kind of European, has been obsessed with Eurovision since the late 90s. So I think you can get that sense of love for the music there, but everything else has gone to waste. And it was scripted by Andrew Steele, who's an SNL writer that wrote that Lifetime movie with Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig, A Deadly Adoption, and also Casa de Mi Padre.
I don't remember that.
This is a lot more entertaining and vibrant compared to those, but
I was amused enough. It did feel long. The only thing it really made me want to do is get on YouTube and watch actual Eurovision performances.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also made me look up My Marianne, who I said was singing for Rachel McAdams. Because really the song about her hometown is, I'd say that's equivalent to the Never Enough track in Greatest Showman.
Sure. I mean, I like Never Enough better, but yes. Yeah, it is like, if you like Never Enough, you would like this hometown song. Yeah. What would you give this film?
I was struggling with that. I'm leaning towards 2.
You'll make it.
2 out of 5. I think 2.5 is fair considering that the perks of investment if you watch the whole thing.
I will give it 2.5 out of 5. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, bye.
Bye.